Hello, and welcome to Get Good. This is another video on Jane Saar. This is just quickly me showing her off before I jump into painting, because I will be painting this multi-bladed weapon of hers. I have no idea what something like this is called, but well, if you do, you can comment it below. But to me, it's a multi-bladed weapon. As you could see there, I was just pointing out which planes I would be, or parts of the blades I would be painting here. I have angled it on this. It's a Danish blue tack. I know it's yellow, but it is a kind of a blue tack that I use for sticking parts onto as I paint them, and it is roughly angled in the way that she is holding it. So maybe not exactly, but roughly. That means it will be these three sides of, well, each blade kind of has two sides. And when I look at it, it looks like both sides are supposed to be sharp. At least that's how I'm going to paint it. And I'm starting out by painting, I'm saying the top parts, but really because it's round, it's about how you angle it, which part is the top one. But these would be the three that are facing the light as she's holding it aloft. And that's to say that I will be painting the lower side too, and I will be painting them that side sharp, but it won't go as bright. And I think I will be putting in a bit of red into those because of her bright red hair. So I wanted to show some of that red in there. I could have put some red in these reflections too, but I don't because, well, the main light is basically flooding all of that out. And maybe if there was a bit more space on these, I would have liked to have a secondary reflection or a bounce light in red. But as well, they're not incredibly small, but they aren't huge like a sword or something like that. So I didn't feel like I had that much space. So I will be saving the red for the bottom facing, well, blade parts. So yeah, in this video I'm painting those three sides. I started out by just sketching in roughly where I thought I wanted reflections, just to see if it looked kind of okay. And I was happy enough with that to start out. The paints I'm using, well, it's incredibly simple. I'm using a dark gray, a mid-tone gray, and a white. And it does not matter which one you use at all. I am using a Vallejo German gray as my darkest, a Vallejo neutral gray as my mid-tone, and then a Reaper white for my solid white. It does not matter at all. I cannot stress it enough. And if you want to have a bit of color in there, you could have chosen all or some of them to be a bit bluish or a bit greenish or a bit whatever. So you can really tweak it however you want to. I chose these to be like very neutral, because I had an idea of those like the red reflections on the other side. So I wanted this one to not have a lot of color. I could have gone for a bit warmer in these reflections, as they are basically pointed up towards the sun. So they could have had a bit of yellow in the brightest of the reflections. But I already did her, well, the spear blade. And the main reflections on that one goes pretty bright, or really bright, and quite close to a neutral. It doesn't have a lot of color in there. So I wanted to keep it that way. For painting this, the brush I'm using here is an Artis Opus size 1 brush. It does have a bit of wear, but the tip is pretty good on it, and it holds some amount of paint. Of course, as these reflections are small, you might want a smaller brush to be able to paint them in. But just be mindful that the smaller the brush, the less paint it holds, and the less paint it holds, the quicker that paint will dry out. So I'm basically weighing up how much do I think I will be blending back and forth with how small a brush do I need the details to be. And yeah, I think this brush did it well. And I mean, I'm always cleaning up these things I work over in video. I clean it up after, simply for the fact that I can't get as neat on video as I can without the film setup. So I do clean it up just to go as quote unquote perfect as I can, within reason, of course. But it's not that what I do on camera is, well, I'd say 98% of the way or something like that. So I just, neaten up a bit here and there, just to make sure. And when I do that, I usually switch to a size 00 Artis Opus, just because it can make incredibly small and fine marks. And that helps me for the way I'm blending. Because the way I'm blending, I am using 2x magnification, and I almost paint exclusively under 2x magnification. Sometimes it's 1x magnification, and sometimes it's 2.5. But I basically always paint with some sort of magnification outside of like base coating something, or if it's something bigger and I need to maybe glaze a filter in to change a bit of hue or something like that. Well, I might not, but when I'm doing any kind of detail work, I am basically always under magnification. And that ties in with the way I'm painting. Because the way I'm blending these things and building up the layers is I mix between darker and lighter colors. And if I'm not completely satisfied with the transition, I will just dip it back in and get a bit more of a lighter color on, and then go over the area a tiny bit, but kind of cut into the edge of it. You can see here how I'm just adding a bit more white to the mid-tone. And then I'm doing another pass, or basically another layer. So it is tiny layering. Small marks and brush strokes, and then building it up. I find that useful because, at least for me, I am painting stuff and being incredibly neat with it. So that means that the details are really small. And the smaller those details are, well, the less you can move the brush, basically. And I find that when I want to glaze something, I ideally want to move the brush quite a bit, to make kind of like a sweeping motion over the area. Otherwise, I would have to do basically stipple glazing. And stipple glazing takes a lot of time. You can get it incredibly smooth, but it just takes so much time. So what I ended up doing instead is this technique of basically going over the same area and then mixing in a bit more brighter color, and then layering up a tiny layer, and then a bit more and tiny layer. And because of the magnification, I can see those layer lines even when they are really too small to see with your regular vision. I can still kind of see them. And that means if I'm not satisfied with the transition as I look at it through 2x magnification, I will go in, take a bit of color, and sometimes I will be watering it down more than my usual, because my usual is around 50-50 water to paint. Of course, depending on the paint and color and everything. But then I might water it down so it's more like 2x water to or 2 parts water to 1 part paint. And it doesn't quite become a glaze, but it does make a much softer mark. And that means when I'm then scratching over a transition with that, it goes even more smooth. So you can kind of view it in a sense that I'm putting pixels on. Same when you look at your computer screen, everything looks smooth, but it is really consisting of tiny dots. And it's basically the same here. Maybe not dots, but at least it's oftentimes stripy motions. And I'm very mindful of dragging in the direction of the light, or if I'm painting with the darker color, in the direction of the shadow. But it's just that I press very lightly, and I do these stripes or scratches small enough so that they aren't really noticeable, because I go through the color transition so slowly. So that's why I use a tiny brush, 2x magnification, and go quite a lot back and forth between between my color mixes. As I was talking, you could see I started edge highlighting. I cleaned it up a bit, mainly for the video, because I know I'll be painting the bottom side of these reflections anyway, so it is a bit wasted. I did it because I wanted to show, and just so that you know that sometimes I do also paint outside the lines, and I find that as long as you just go in and clean it up, take your base color or whatever color you accidentally got onto. If you take that and cut into whatever line you put that went a bit too fat or too crooked or whatever, it's no problem at all, and you can get extremely fine lines by basically putting it down and then cutting into it. It is much easier cutting into a line than it is to paint a completely straight and neat line. So don't worry if you accidentally go a bit crooked or whatever, just cut into it with the other color. So talking a bit about these reflections, I want these bladed weapons to look very sharp, and to do that I want the non-metallic to be quite bright, and not only do I want it bright, but because you can do that with having a lot of big bright reflections on there and a fair amount of mid-tone and not a lot of shadow. You need the shadow there, but you don't have to have too much of it, and it will look like very bright steel. But I didn't only want that, I also wanted it to look very polished, and the way to make it look quite polished, and polished makes it automatically kind of look very sharp, is to put in more reflections. So not on, basically on all of them, but I'm not painting in the reflections exactly the same brightness, but I am painting in more than one reflection on each of them. So as you can see here, be mindful that the colors you see here are, or value is not exactly corresponding to the value it is in real life, simply for the fact that it is like a very bright light is shining onto it, which means that the brightest colors, like the off-white gray and the pure white, they kind of bleed together a bit because the light washes them out. But it is fairly close, and it is at least close enough for you to get the idea. So you can see they kind of have a main reflection, the biggest and brightest one, and then I give them a bit of mid-tone and then another smaller bright reflection, and then it goes into dark. And I'm doing that because the more small reflections you put in there, basically the more of a chrome finish it looks. If you have something in your house you're looking at, it can be a water faucet or a door handle, or anything that is cylindrical. that you have in your house that is a chrome, you can see when you look at it that it has a lot of reflections of the environment that is reflected in it. And that means the more you approach a mirror finish, the more detail you will see. Of course, I can't paint in the entirety of her surroundings in these blades, so we can't go for a pure chrome, but we can approach it. And as I said, the trick to kind of approach it is to put more reflections. And the more reflections you put, the more chrome it looks. I oftentimes do it with the bladed weapons like axes, for example, because axe blades are a bit boring. They are often quite straight, and then maybe only the bottom or the top or something like that on power axes are curved. So they aren't too exciting, and I oftentimes use that kind of striping method on those to just add some interest or more interest. But it's the same principle that we're using here. So having that main reflection and then a secondary reflection just besides it kind of tricks you into thinking that it is showing something from the environment, because it is even more reflective approaching chrome. So where to put those reflections on these blades? Well, there is no real answer. There is. The real answer is it's up to you. You obviously need to put them somewhere where it looks good, which is almost the worst answer you can get, because, well, how do you know before you paint it? And, well, you kind of don't. But as you've done it more and more times, you kind of remember what worked and what didn't. And so it is a lot of trial and error. But I don't think it matters too much exactly where you put them. But I wanted to put them basically where there was enough area to show them. And because the blades are tapering in towards the tip, naturally I ended up putting the reflections on the bigger part. If that is correct in a physical sense, well, that would depend on exactly how the light is angled and what is in the environment and all kinds of things. So I recommend not getting too hung up in exactly where the reflection should be, as long as it's believable. So of course it has to be in line with your main light direction, which means that, as I said in the beginning, that's the reason why I'm painting these upwards facing blade parts, as she's holding the weapon, as I'm basically holding it here, as you're seeing it here. If you imagine the light from the top and the left, a bit to the left, it would catch the top of one blade and basically the bottom of the other two. One of them I'm putting the main reflection towards the tip instead of on the big part, and I'm doing that because the light is basically traveling in a straight line. So if you imagine it would travel downwards until something was obstructing it. The tip of that blade would be the first thing to really obstruct it, so as to catch it. But as I said, you could basically put these reflections anywhere. I do recommend trying to be a bit varied, so as not all of the reflections are exactly the same size, not all exactly the same brightness, and not in exactly the same spot. The more variation you can put in there, basically the more realistic it looks. If you do it too uniform, it can end up looking quite fake. So yeah, that's going all the way from the darkest to the lightest colors, almost black to all the way up to I use pure white, and then building the reflections and the secondaries on these blades. So thank you for watching, and I'll catch you in the next one.